It started with a phone call. A quiet one, the kind that cuts through a morning you thought would be ordinary. Detective Raymond Cole was sitting in his small office at the Cedar Falls precinct, half listening to the low hum of the coffee machine when the call came in. "Ray, you're going to want to hear this," said Marcy from the state crime lab. Her voice was calm, professional, but there was an edge he hadn't heard in decades. She told him they'd found something. A partial DNA profile from an evidence kit collected back in 1995, a kit that had sat, untouched, in a cardboard box for nearly 30 years. The case? The murder of 19-year-old Claire Wendell. Ray's heart skipped. He hadn't heard her name in decades, but the memory hit like a flood. Claire's murder had been his first big case as lead detective. It was supposed to make his career. Instead, it had nearly broken him. Back then, Cedar Falls was a quiet, storybook town. 2 stoplights. A main street lined with brick buildings. Hanging flower baskets in the summer. Nothing bad ever happened there. Until Claire. She'd been reported missing after failing to show up for her shift at the diner. 2 days later, her body was found near Miller's Creek, a wooded area just outside town. Her car sat half a mile up the dirt road, keys in the ignition. The scene was brutal. Her body, half submerged in the cold creek, hair tangled with weeds. Strangled. Defensive wounds. Signs of a struggle. Evidence of sexual assault, though the town didn't speak of that publicly. Ray remembered every detail. The smell of wet earth. The current whispering against the rocks. Her wristwatch still ticking. The investigation consumed Cedar Falls for months. Interviews, polygraphs, canvassing door to door. They spoke with ex-boyfriends, co-workers, truckers passing through, even a drifter camping nearby. Nothing stuck. DNA testing in 1995 was slow, unreliable. Samples were collected but most ended up filed away, evidence bags labeled in blue ink, sealed with tape that had yellowed with age. The case went cold. Ray carried it with him. Even after he retired the first time, the image of that creek haunted him. He'd wake in the middle of the night, half dreaming he was standing on that bank, flashlight sweeping the water, knowing Claire deserved better. And now, nearly 30 years later, her name was back. Marcy told him the new sequencing technology had retested old kits from unsolved cases. Claire's was one of them. The results? A clean, partial male profile. Strong enough to compare. But when they ran it through CODIS, the federal DNA database, it came back, nothing. No match. That didn't make sense. 30 years, and no trace. Whoever had done this should have left something behind, a ticket, an arrest, a military record. But there was nothing. It was as if the person had never existed. Ray drove to the evidence warehouse the next morning. The place looked like a morgue, rows of metal shelving, fluorescent lights, cardboard boxes filled with tragedies waiting for closure. He found Claire's box. Inside, a torn pair of jeans, a pale sweater, photographs from the scene, and a police report typed on an old Smith Corona. His writing. He began going through the old witness statements. Claire's parents, her best friend Jen, her boyfriend Kyle Hastings. Kyle had been their prime suspect back then. A rocky teenage relationship, fights, breakups, makeups. He had been seen arguing with Claire outside a gas station the night she disappeared. But his alibi, being home with his mother, checked out. DNA didn't match back then. Still, something about him had always bothered Ray. Kyle had moved away after the case went cold, dropping off the map. Ray tracked him down to a lakeside resort in Michigan, working maintenance under a different name. Kyle looked like a ghost of his younger self, thinner, pale, nervous energy intact. "You hear about Claire," he said before Ray even spoke. They sat on the porch, the lake smooth like glass. Kyle swore he didn't do it, said he'd moved away because the town had turned on him. He thought about Claire every day. Ray asked for a voluntary DNA sample. Kyle agreed. A week later, Marcy called. No match. Frustration crawled up Ray's chest. 30 years and still nothing. He began combing old maps, police notes, photographs, looking for any overlooked detail. That's when he noticed it. A name scribbled in pencil in the margin of a report: Travis H., possible witness, saw vehicle. Travis Holland. 17 at the time, lived near the edge of town. He claimed to have seen a dark pickup near the creek the night Claire vanished. It had been dismissed as too vague. Ray ran the name anyway. Travis had died in 2012, construction accident. But he had a son, Jacob Holland, 32. Ray checked the timeline. Travis would have been 17 in 1995, Jacob born a couple years later. That meant, the killer could be linked to the Holland family. He asked Marcy to run familial DNA checks against genealogy databases. 3 weeks later, she called. We found something, she said. The DNA was a close paternal match to Jacob. Not Jacob, not Travis. A relative, a male relative previously unknown. Ray's chest tightened. They dug through birth records. Hospital logs. Census data. A record from 1976, a male infant deceased shortly after birth, with the same mother's last name. But the death certificate had no attending physician's signature. If the record was wrong, if the child had survived, this unknown man could have been 19 in 1995. The perfect age to commit the crime. And because he never existed on paper, there were no records, no social security number, no license, no arrest history. Ray reached out to the Holland family. The mother, now in a nursing home, was frail and barely lucid. When asked if she ever had another son, her hand trembled. She wasn't supposed to live, she whispered. Ray pressed gently, but the nurses intervened. That was the last he could get from her. She passed a few weeks later. The trail ended there. The DNA tied the crime to the Holland paternal line, likely to this hidden son, but there was no living suspect to charge. The case remained technically unsolved. Ray retired again. For good. He still drives by Miller's Creek sometimes. Trees grown thicker, dirt road almost gone. He feels her there, Claire. And maybe the man who took her life too. Some nights, he dreams he's at the creek, flashlight sweeping the water. Just beyond the light, a shadow waits. No face. No name. Just the ghost of a man who was never supposed to exist. And the thought lingers, even now, he might still be out there, walking unnoticed, wearing someone else's name. Because cold cases never really die. They wait, patient as time itself, for someone to dig them back up. And sometimes, when you do, what stares back at you isn't an answer. It's a reminder. That some secrets were never meant to be solved.